So the UFC is running out of superheroes. In the last month or two, it looks like they've lost both George St. Pierre and Anderson Silva, who were their really two um, top money fighters. I mean, they brought in the Bucks, and now both of them are gone. GSP left because basically he recognizes, I think, that his career is done as a top fighter. I mean, if he doesn't recognize it, he should. Um, he's starting to sustain brain injuries, and he went out for a while on a ACL injury, and has never really. When he came back, he's not been the same fighter. He's starting to get really beat up every time he fights, and the last fight he had with Hendricks, um, title fight, he was being so pummeled that, by his own account, he was pretty much unconscious for certain rounds of the fight. Lost time, didn't know what was going on. He was just on automatic pilot, and that's not good. So he's stepped down. He said he's taking time off, but I hope he doesn't come back as a fighter. I hope that he's got enough, um, you know, ego security in himself that he doesn't have to do that. That he recognizes it's time to stop before he gets too much brain injury. I mean, he's already sustained some. Anderson Silva, the last time he fought Chris Weidman, and he was kind of goofing around. He wasn't taking it too seriously, and Weidman caught him off guard, knocked him out, and became the middleweight champion in the UFC. So Silva lost his title, and then sounded like he was going to start moving back toward retirement. I think he had some fights left on his contract or something like that, but he, from his interviews immediately after the fight, he kind of felt like he was done with it. But then one way or another, he was compelled to a rematch. People wanted to see what would happen if Silva was taking Weidman more seriously. So that happened last night, and as many people saw, something really grotesque happened in the second round where he threw one of his usual roundhouse kicks to the legs of Weidman, and Weidman was able to use his knee to catch Silva's shin in the roundhouse, and basically Silva's shin bone was just destroyed. It was completely destroyed. So that knee check was all it took, and that's it. There's no way he's ever fighting again. I mean, his leg was completely destroyed. It looked like he was made of rubber. It just broke. His foot was, his whole lower, down toward his ankle and his shin bone, the whole thing was just, it was just flopped out like, oh, it was sick. So, what can we learn from what's going on here, especially with this most recent, with Anthony Silva's leg injury, but also taking into perspective what's happened with GSP, because I think it's significant that in this just a short little time that these two huge name fighters are done, and why are they done? What brought them to the being finished, and what can we learn from these things? Okay, so from last night, I've basically so far I've basically taken 3 lessons from this as I've been considering what can be learned. The first lesson is obviously the one that a lot of people are going to take from this fight. A lot of people who are martial artists or fighters and such, and that is um, having our attention brought to the technique, to what actually happened, and what we can learn from that. So I guarantee you, this week in the MMA gyms and in other um, martial arts gyms, kuns and dojos and such, there's going to be a heightened focus on practicing stop kicks and knee checks and these kind of things, because this is what Weidman in the post-fight interview spoke about, was that he'd gone away from the last fight with Silva, recognizing how many of these low leg kicks that Silva throws, just basically this was part of Silva's bag of tricks, and a lot of people are using that and have used it in the past, and it's basically throw roundhouse kicks to the thighs, outer thighs, inner thighs, knees, even calves. Basically kind of like brutalize the legs of the opponent, such that it's hard for them. They're sore as they're fighting, and it's hard for them to maintain a good stand-up fight because their legs are so sore. And there's always the possibility of snapping something if you hit the knee the right way, and ending the opponent right there. So this has been part of Silva's fighting style. If you watch his fights, you'll see him constantly throwing these low roundhouse kicks to the legs. Weidman, after he fought him the last time, went back to train and for the rematch, and thought he's going to do something about these roundhouse kicks, and so what he trained in was knee checks, checking the roundhouse with his knees. That's what he used. That's what caught Silva. He was throwing one of these kicks. Weidman's knee went up to catch it, and that shin hitting against the hard knee was enough to just blow out the shin like nothing. Take Anderson Silva, who's thrown the kick, who knows, maybe 1,000,000 times, and just ends it for him right there. Ends everything for him. Not only that fight, but any fight in the future he's done. So this is one of the things. Of course, we're going to learn technique, right? People from here out are going to probably be a little more guarded about throwing that kick. I would think that fighters, especially, are going to be a little bit more shy about how they throw that kick, and whether their opponent could possibly check it with the knee. And on the flip side, I think it's going to become a normal part of the training for as long as people are continuing to use that kick a lot, to learn to check it with the knee whenever possible, such that there's a chance of seeing this same injury again. And this is not the first time that this particular injury has happened. I don't know if it's happened in the UFC, but and this will go into the second thing that I learned too, is that really that your leg is not meant to sustain hard blunt force right here on the shin, right? So it probably won't be the last time that kind of injury is seen. Okay, so that's the first lesson, is just the training lesson people are going to take from this. they're going to be a little bit more guarded with that kick, and um, they're probably going to be a bit more focused on how to defend against that kick. Um, then the second thing is, when I saw what happened, um, what immediately I became aware of, or hyper aware of. I was already aware of it, but it brought it into stark relief and made it me even more aware of it. Is the structure of the leg itself, the appearance and structure of the leg itself, what the leg is anatomically built for. In this case, is very different than what we're using it for. When you look at the leg, when I look at the leg at least, especially after seeing an injury like that where you see the leg doing something that it's not supposed to do, bent in a way that's not supposed to be bent, this kind of a thing, and just the hair stands up because you can just imagine, the kind of, it's just terrible and gruesome. But for me, it brings my eyes to the structure of the leg itself, and what is that leg built for? When I look at the leg, I see we got these, fairly long feet, where the digits, the toes and stuff, they're not long like our fingers. They're no longer meant to grasp or anything like that. The way that the foot is structured is so that we should be using a lot of that action of the ball of our foot, that spring on the ball of our foot, and so there's a lot of good ligaments on the top of the foot to support that action. We got padding, here and on the heel. Those are the two spots we're going to be touching the most. And then coming up the leg on this portion of our leg, the shin portion, all the muscles toward the back. And again, that is really to support this spring action of the foot, right? And the ankle and all of the structures to support this action of the foot, the spring action of the foot. And then of course we've got the knee joint, which is relatively delicate, and then the thigh and all of the musculature around the thigh that's made to pick up our legs. And so what I see when I look at the leg is I see an instrument, really an instrument of propulsion. This is what its evolutionary design structure is. It's an instrument of propulsion. It's to carry us long distances running, and so and basically in our evolutionary history, this was to run down ungulates over those long distances, or to run down deer, antelope, or what have you, the prey that we're going after for protein, which was only a smaller part of our diet, but definitely part of our history. So you look at the legs that we have, and the upright posture that we have, and all of this. The top portion of our bodies is meant for tool use, and the lower portion is meant for propulsion. It's really clear when you look at our bodies. You look at the difference between our hands and our feet, and the difference between the ways that our arms move, as compared to the way that our legs are designed to move. And so you look at that, and you see that the leg is made for propulsion. And in that sense, when you take that instrument that's made for that kind of propulsion, bring it into what we're doing in the martial arts, what are the natural kicks, the natural ways that our leg is designed. It's designed to support the running, but the kicks that are most closely related to the design of our legs is probably the front kick, the push kicks, the back kick. But stuff like the roundhouse kick, the side kick, or the hook kick, or reverse hook, or crescent, or reverse crescent, butterfly kicks, and all this crazy stuff. Our legs are not really designed to do that. We are repurposing the tools that we have to do that. We're taking an instrument made for one thing and we're using it for another. And there's no saying that we shouldn't do that. I think definitely, we should. I don't think our legs are made just for the one thing. Of course, obviously, there's been a lot of violence in our evolutionary history. Obviously, we've had to defend ourselves against other humans and animals and stuff like that. And so we have this capacity in us, but it's not a big one. It's not a big one. It's not the main thing. The main thing is obviously the propulsion. By looking at the design of the leg, if fighting, and particularly using a roundhouse kick, for instance, was important in our evolutionary history, then we would be born with a different structure to our lower leg. We would not be born with our bone, with nerve endings here, where it hurts us normally to get hit in the shin. Our bone would probably be structured differently so that it could withstand a lot better those kind of kicks against solid objects, like what we saw the bones do not withstand last night when Silva kicked Weidman and hit his knee. It was just bang, it was done. So, if we were born to do that kick, our hips would be different, our lower leg would certainly be designed differently, but we're not. we're not, that wasn't a big feature in our evolutionary history. That kick is something we were doing, that we're repurposing the tools that we have in order to accomplish. And that's fine. That's fine. We should do that. However, knowing as we do now, and being more aware of the fact that we're not really designed to do this kick, then we should be more careful with it. We should be more careful with it in the training. These guys it's one thing to go around, to kick a heavy bag or to kick a striking shield, or even to practice a little bit, trying to kill some of these nerve endings so that it won't hurt so much if we get kicked in the shins or if we kick something with our shins. It's one thing to go that far, but when we're actually kicking very hard objects, like there's these guys, that will practice kicking trees and wood and stuff with their shins, supposedly to harden the bone. Now, how much that bone actually hardens, I think might be debatable. I don't know if there's actual proof that the bone actually hardens in such a way that it's not going to be shattering when you kick something solid. I know I've seen demonstrations of Muay Thai guys, breaking trees, breaking wood boards and stuff like this with the shin. I got respect for that, but at the same time, what last night's incident told me was that we're not really designed to do that. I mean, it just made me more aware. We're not really designed to do that, so we need to be more careful with that. That should not be a primary weapon. That should be, use it when you have to. Um, um, it shouldn't be something that you should be, because that this tool was not meant to do that. You shouldn't be doing that all the time, practicing it all the time against hard objects and stuff like that, and certainly not for sport, just for spectacle sport, using your legs like that in a way that risks such serious injury. So, this is my second lesson. My second lesson is pay more attention to the anatomical structure of the human body, to what it was built to do. Recognize that a lot of what we do in martial arts is repurposing that anatomical structure to do things that it wasn't really meant to do, and that absolutely puts us at risk of serious injury, because the body was not built to do that thing. We're using it for that thing. Therefore, there's a good chance that if we're not careful with the way that we're using it, we are going to end up with serious, perhaps long-term, permanent injuries, because we're basically abusing the body. I mean, this is what happens with jiu-jitsu. How many guys in jiu-jitsu end up with back problems, with herniated discs, or pinched nerves, or what have you, because we're not meant to be rolling around on the ground like that. I'm not saying that it's not good to practice some ground technique for martial arts, for self-defense, but doing it all the time, like someone would do to make that, a part of their professional lives, is going to put you at risk for serious permanent back injury. And it's just as simple as that, because the body's not it's not made for that. We need to pay more attention to the structure of our body, look at how we're using that structure in the martial arts, whether the movement that we're doing in the martial arts is natural, or whether it's going against the structure of our bodies. Because the fighting thing, it should be, to me, the fighting thing is really important in the martial arts to young men and women. But when you get to even my age at 40, I'm 41, but you get to into your middle ages, and especially older, the rationale for martial arts, for your own training, changes dynamically. It's not so much about the fighting. For me, it's about longevity, it's about flexibility, it's about speed, it's about strength, it's about balance, it's about the health of the body, and the discipline, the training of the mind, training of the spirit, but mainly it's about health. It's not so much about fighting. So if you're someone that's in it for the long term, for the health benefits of martial arts, then really you should be paying more attention to the anatomical structure of the body, and how you're using that structure in the martial arts, and how you may be repurposing tools that aren't meant to be doing the things that you're doing with them. And then be careful, and don't be taking big risks, where you can end up with long-term injuries, because that defeats the purpose of health. So that's lesson number 2. Lesson number 3 from this incident, and you can throw the GSP thing in there as well, is I think this really shows that the mythology surrounding debates about the UFC and MMA, and whether it's appropriate for sport. Um, that mythology is coming into relief, where it's clear that what's been said in the past, which is that um, there aren't so many bad injuries or these kind of things. Certainly no deaths and this and that. That this is a safe sport. That's being proven wrong. It's not a safe sport. Um, and I think what we've seen in the last month or two with GSP and with Silva is that we have to start recognizing that it's not a safe sport. That that people are going to leave that sport with brain injuries. That people are going to leave that sport with really terrible damage to other parts of their bodies, like Silva has, and that part of what makes it not safe is because these guys, who are somewhat desperate guys in a lot of cases, are being prostituted, and the promoter, Dana White, is using them as long as they're useful, and then they're going to be garbage. And you could see this with what happened with GSP when he fought the Hendricks, and really, though he technically won, he totally lost the fight. He got beat up really bad and admitted to having lost consciousness and lost time and all of this, and this is not the first time for him to be talking about this, how he's losing time. He's got some brain injury stuff going on there, and immediately after the fight, he was saying, it's time for me to step away for a little while. I need to take a break, whether he was going to retire or just take a long break and reconsider life or whatever. To me, it sounded like he recognized that it's time for him to get out of the game. But right away, Dana White's saying, the reasons that he's saying that are not really that serious. I'm going to talk to him. We'll see what we can do. I was glad to hear in the news not long ago that GSP, that George had actually relinquished the title now and stepped out. So to me, I hope that says this guy has enough ego security that he's calling it game over before it gets any worse than it already is, because he's already got brain damage. It's pretty clear. But if it was up to Dana White, he'd fight again. He'd be back fighting with Hendricks and possibly leave with really bad permanent damage, maybe death. We haven't seen the death happen yet, but it's going to happen. And then again with Silva. Last time Silva fought this Weidman, he was kind of taking it lightly and got caught off guard and got knocked out and all of this. But after the fight, he was saying, that's it for me. I'm done having these kind of fights, these kind of championship fights. Now everybody should recognize that Chris Weidman is the best, and thank you UFC, thank you America for the opportunity that you've given me and my family to make it. And that basically what that says to me is, this is one of these typical guys that would not have achieved the standard of living that he achieved without having to fight like this, having to put his well-being at risk in the ring like that. And he was gracious for having the opportunity, but he was ready to step down. Um, he was probably ready even before that, but getting beat opened that doorway for him where he's like, all right, good, I'm done now. I'm tired. I've done this for a long time. He's 38 years old. He knows, it's time to get out of that racket. But again, just like with GSP, the Pimp comes around. Hey, Anderson, we want to see one more fight with this Weidman. We want to see what happens when you're not horsing around. Come on. We've probably, gives in the guilt trip. We've invested so much in you, and helped you out so much and this and that. Give us one more fight for the fans and all of this stuff, and we want to see what happens, Any case, something to that effect happened where, from what Silva was saying, immediately after the fight last time, to where he was last night, where he's ready to go and give it to this guy, ready to take it to him and fight again, hardcore. That change in attitude, perspective from being done to I'm going to really fight again. Something happened in there, and I think it's the Pimp. But in any case, he got in the ring again. Look what happened. Now he's not going to fight anymore. Now he's not even going to be a real, top athlete anymore. He can't. He's ruined. You break a bone, that big of a bone in your body, you're ruined. Yeah, he's going to go through the physical therapy and stuff, through the surgeries and all of that. He'll be back on his feet. Maybe he'll coach, But this is the third lesson that I get from this whole thing, is that even these guys, these big name guys, these really important figures, supposedly really important public figures, are just really being used as much as they can be until they can't be used anymore. And it's the prostitution. And because that prostitution is happening, for that reason alone, that mythology of the UFC, MMA stuff being safe has got to go. I mean, it's not a safe sport when your inner voice is telling you, I got to get out, and the Pimp is telling you, you're not allowed to get out yet. When it's clear that you're losing your fighting ability due to age or what have you, you're just not in your game anymore, but they keep pushing you to fight more anyway, because of the money. That's what puts people in these makes it even more unsafe than it already is. It's already not safe. Already what you're doing is, again, you're taking a body that's built to do certain things, making it do other things, and putting it in a situation where there's going to be lots of physical trauma, and it's physical trauma surrounding inappropriate anatomical use of the body. The chances for injuries are enormous, and critical injuries. They're already enormous, and take that and add to it the whole prostitution thing, where they got the promoter who's not going to allow people, or who's going to really, really try to compel people who are done being fighters to continue, because they got a little bit of game left, even though they know they're not at the top of their game anymore, and they're at risk for injuries. That kind of condition makes it all the more unsafe. So, people are going to have to start recognizing this, that it's not a safe sport at all, and that it is a form of prostitution, and that these poor guys, they're, I mean, I shouldn't call them too poor because they're making lots of money, but at the same time, they're being made to feel like superstars when really they're like bottom of the barrel entertainers being used for what they got, and then when they lose it by injury or what have you, thrown away. How many of these guys are we going to see in the long run? The very most charismatic of them will probably, stick around as, announcers and interviewers and ringside commentators and these kind of things, the very most charismatic of them. But the vast majority of these guys are going to get used and thrown away. And that's just the game that it is, and it's not a safe game. It's not a healthy game. And I think it's sad that so much of the public is supporting it. So those are my 3 lessons that I got from the incident of last night. Again, number 1, technique. Learn from what happened. Apply it to your martial arts. Number 2, in terms of safety, we need to, in our own health, we need to recognize what our bodies are made for, and the ways that we're using our bodies, the ways that we're using them that they were not made for, and practice more caution in doing that, so that we're gaining health benefits instead of gaining injuries. And number 3, competition fighting is just proving itself more and more to be an unsafe ring of prostitution. That's it. That's my 3 so far things that I've taken from last night's incident with Silva's broken leg.